I remember when I saw my first cordless drill. My family owned a little country hardware store and we splurged on 2 Makita drills to sell, which we proudly displayed right on the counter next to the cash register. They were more than $200 each 30 years ago, which is about $400 in today's money. That's a lot for a drill. But I was instantly hooked, and as soon as I could afford it, I got one for myself. Not this one. The cordless drills back then were much bulkier with giant batteries in the handles that just didn't last very long. But it was the first and for a long time only power tool I used for woodworking. I used it to drill holes and I used it to drive screws. Lots and lots of screws. Fast forward a couple decades and cordless drill technology had come a long way. Today's cordless drills are more compact, they're more powerful, they come with much better batteries, and they're often sold with a friend. This is a cordless impact driver. I don't remember when I first saw one of these. Of course, I'd seen pneumatic impact drivers used by mechanics before these, but I think the first time I noticed that cordless versions were being packaged with drills and sold to DIYers was about a decade ago. It wasn't long before it was hard to find a simple cordless drill without an impact driver also in the box. This became my screwdriver. It's pretty much all I used it for, driving screws into things. The drill was for boring holes, the impact driver was for filling those holes with screws, and it was mostly great at first. No more swapping back and forth between bits. But it wasn't long before I learned that this is not an electric screwdriver. It's a very specific tool that comes with a lot of advantages, but it can also screw things up pretty badly, pun intended, in some situations. To understand what I mean, you have to understand how a cordless impact driver is different from a cordless drill. Both are rotary tools. They spin bits and drive things into wood and other materials, but they react differently when they encounter resistance. Before cordless drills came out, we drove screws by hand, or if you were really brave, you could use a corded drill, or as they were commonly called, drill motors. I say you had to be brave because when you pulled the trigger, you unleashed a tremendous amount of torque. If your drill didn't have a variable speed feature, you could strip out your screw head, break it off, or drive it an inch into the wood in a hurry. And even with variable speed, it could be a little tricky. The first time I saw a clutch mechanism was on a cordless drill. Maybe they existed before that, but they're now pretty universal on cordless drills. When this encounters resistance, the clutch slips and the drill stops driving the screw. You can adjust the sensitivity of the clutch to the job, and it will help you avoid driving the screw too deeply or stripping the head or even snapping the head off. An impact driver makes a similar clicking noise when it encounters resistance, but rather than halting the driving action, it's actually increasing the force. Have you ever tried to change a tire on the side of the road and the lug nuts were too tight? So you may have stiffened your arms and sort of dropped your upper body weight down onto the bar, or even hit the end of the bar with something hard like a hammer to sort of break that nut free. That's what an impact driver does. Every one of those fast clicking or knocking noises is like the force of a hammer, dramatically increasing the rotary force of the tool, a split second at a time. And when you do it many times a second, it can drive a screw or loosen a bolt that a regular drill may not be able to handle. I say it's like many raps from a hammer, but don't confuse an impact driver with a hammer drill. A hammer drill rotates while also tapping the bit forward like a jackhammer, usually to bore holes in hard materials like concrete. An impact driver produces only rotary forces, but these forces make it much easier to drive screws into thick materials such as construction lumber or to drive large fasteners like lag screws. You would think that impact action would vibrate the tool and make it hard to hold into the end of your screw, like a Phillips head, for example, but it actually has the opposite effect. While a regular power drill's continuous force may cause the bit to ride up on the angled facets inside a Phillips head screw and then pop out, the split-second pauses between the impacts of an impact driver allow the screw bit to reset within the head, making it easier to drive these screws in without slipping out. This means you don't have to apply as much downward pressure while you drive the screw, which is handy in awkward places where you can't get your weight behind the tool. And the lesser tendency to slip out of the head helps prevent you from accidentally marring your work or smashing your fingers. Sounds like the perfect screwdriver, right? It absolutely is, until it isn't. There are some situations common to woodworking where these can get you in a world of hurt. For example, If you're working with pocket hole joinery, this is a terrible tool for driving your screws. Especially with soft woods, you may overdrive the screws, causing the tips to pop out the other side of the connecting board, or causing the pocket itself to split or crumble. It's a good way to mess up a project. Impact drivers also produce so much torque that they can easily snap the head off a screw driven into harder materials, such as oak or maple. Now, if this happens when the screw is only driven halfway in, you could get out a pair of pliers and grab the shaft to twist it out. But it's more likely to happen when the head just begins to seat on the wood's surface, popping it off and leaving nothing for you to grab onto to extract your broken screw. Both of these situations are easily avoided by setting the clutch mechanism on the cordless power drill and using it instead of the impact driver to drive your screws. An impact driver is not a do-it-all screwdriver. It's a great tool for construction projects, for installing cabinets on a wall, or driving fasteners in soft woods where speed and efficiency is more important than precisely seating the head. But in my opinion, a regular cordless power drill is more suited to many woodworking tasks. And in my shop, it's the member of this team that sees the most use. MyWoodcutters.com is the sort of small business I like to support. Stefan is a great guy, and he can find you knives and cutters for almost any joiner, planer, shaper, or molding machine. And his are the best prices if you're planning to upgrade to a helical carbide cutter head. Please use the link below this video to check with him before you buy somewhere else. Some small businesses are just worth supporting. Wait, don't go yet. If you're new here, please subscribe and remember to ring the bell. I would really appreciate that. Give us a thumbs up, or better yet, leave us a comment. I always read them. And be sure to check out the latest issue of Stumpy Nubs Woodworking Journal. It's always packed with tips, tricks, and tutorials designed to make you a better woodworker.